I vote and I am registered as a Democrat. Not because I'm a diehard Democrat. Far from it. I vote and register as a Democrat because in today's political parties, the Republicans have done so much and acted in so many ways that are harmful to the nation, shows they are all hypocrites, and shows their racial biases by the far. Now, if the Democrats started acting like the Republicans, I would drop them in a heartbeat. Because I am not invested in a party. I am invested in my nation. And if the people of this nation voted Trump back in, I would not like it one bit. No, I wouldn't. I would complain and I would bitch and I would be brutally honest about the crap he pulls. If that makes me mean and unpatriotic, so be it. And I would do the same to Biden. Now, Biden has done his wrongs in the past. He has had some homophobic ideals in the past. He has changed, and he has showed he has changed. The Republicans have showed who they are by doing things like, for 18 months, blocking Supreme Court nominations because they don't want the lame duck president to decide who the next Supreme Court nominee is. It should be the voter. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But then when there was a Republican in office and Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, it was weeks before the election. And they couldn't get that nomination voted on fast enough. They're hypocrites. They have showed they are hypocrites. They're liars. Trump told everybody that his new tax breaks would help the lower class. When in truth, the largest amount of those tax breaks went to the rich. And the further down you went on the class system, the less you got. Not because of the amount you made, but because of the percentage they were allowed to claim. Time and time again, the Democrats have shown through their policies, through the bills they have been passing, and through their actions, that they are there to help the lower class. They are there to help the nation. They are there to make sure our future is better through climate change. And that's us changing how we interact in this world. Time and time again, Republicans have shown they are nothing more than willing to cater to big oil, big pharma, and big companies. And even big insurance. I'm in a state that caters to them because it's so freaking red. So don't tell me that I'm wrong in being a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat because of the party. I'm a Democrat because of the politicians who belong to that party, their present actions. And if their actions changed, regardless of what they tell people, if they were like the Republicans who say one thing out of one side of their mouth and then do another thing out of the other side of their mouth and with their actions, I would drop them like a rock in a heartbeat. Because I am not Democrat, I am not Republican, I am not independent, I am nothing more than a patriotic voter who votes for what's best for our nation and not just for me. I don't vote against homosexual laws because I'm straight or I'm Christian. I vote for them because I'm human. And they deserve the same rights as me. And so are they human. I don't vote against laws that help to teach about slavery in this country, which is a fact and a truth, or about minority races in this country, which is a fact and a truth. Not a racial bias teaching. It is a fact and a truth. It happened. And it was not pretty, and it was not fun, and it was not kind. I vote for laws that allow that stuff to be taught in classes because the minority groups in our nation are part of our nation. They're part of what built this nation. Without many of them, we wouldn't have this nation. So we deserve to respect them by showing what they have gone through to build this nation. And how they have put in their hard work, their blood to build this nation. So please, go ahead and talk about the libtards all you want. I'm not a liberal and I'm not a conservative. I'm a human. And I believe in human beings having equal rights. That just because where you were born, who you love, or your skin color does not give you the right to more privileges than anybody else. And if you can't handle that, and you see it as your privileges being taken away, then maybe the problem truly is with you. Because nobody's taking your privileges away. You've still got the same privileges and rights. The only privilege and right you don't have is to oppress somebody else because of their skin color, or who they love, or what religion they belong to. If you're free to worship in the religion you choose, then you don't have a right to tell somebody else what religion they should belong to. If you're free to love whoever you want, then you don't have the right to tell somebody else they can't love whoever they want just because they simply don't meet your standards of what's right or wrong. If you're free to go into a store or into a school and be respected for your white skin or have your history taught, then you don't have a right to complain about a black person's history or a Native American person's history being taught, or to ask for them to be disrespected in public or taken off of a plane simply because you don't want to sit beside a black person. I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care what religion you belong to. And I don't care who you love. You have the same equal rights under the Constitution as any other citizen in this nation. And I don't care about your history being taught in school if you can't let all history equally of every citizen in this nation be taught in school. If we can't teach slavery in school, then we shouldn't be teaching about the war against British in school. If we can't teach the oppression and the abuse of Native Americans in school, then we can't teach the migration of white people, Europeans, to this nation. Period. You want to stop the factual teaching of one race, then stop the factual teaching of all races. Stick to geology, math, and science. And leave human history out. Period. You can't accept that? Then stop complaining. It is not critical race theory to teach the facts of slavery in this nation. It is not critical race theory to teach the facts of how Native Americans were treated by European settlers. It is not critical race theory to teach the fact that Native Americans are the reason why Europeans ended up flourishing in this country. That is not critical race theory. That is a fact. It's also not critical race theory to teach that Native Americans held slaves before Europeans came to this nation. But the difference was Native Americans did not have slavery for monetary purposes. If I, as a Native American, went out and struck another tribe, and in doing so, I killed one of my enemy's children who was not part of the battle, or I killed his wife, that tribe would have the right to come to my tribe and steal one of my children or one of my women to replace that what was unjustly lost. That person would only be a slave as long as it took for that person to learn their place in the tribe, to learn the rules of the tribe, to act accordingly within the tribe, and to become part of the tribe, at which time they stopped being a slave. They became an integral member of the tribe. Now, white man came along and taught Native Americans, no, here's how you do slavery. You take a person and you bring them into slavery, you beat them down, you don't really care if they learn your culture. You don't care. So long as they're not out there practicing their own culture. That's all you care about. And then so long as they dress like you. That's all you care about. And you never give them a chance to freedom. If you get tired of them, you either kill them or you sell them off to somebody else to make money. Depending on how much their worth is by how much of ability they have to work. To build your buildings. To plant your crops. To harvest those crops, to clean your houses, to cater to your wives, to give you the men a sexual object to play with, to cook the meals. If they're too sick or elderly to do any of that, then you have a right to kill them. And that was slavery in European society. And if that's teaching critical race theory to you and you don't want it being told, then maybe your mindset is still set back to what the original settlers' mindset was. Because let me tell you something. There were Europeans who came over here who were against slavery. And you can teach about that too. I think it was the Pinkertons that came from Europe that were against slavery. And in fact, I personally had a relative named Charles Barkley who was against slavery. So much so that he tried to free his slaves while he was alive. But he was not allowed to do it because his lawyers advised him against it. Simply because if he did that, the community would be against him. They would probably kill him. His slaves would be then recaptured and sold. So what did he do? He made sure that he set aside a fund for every single one of his slaves. A substantial fund for each one of his slaves. And paperwork for each one of his slaves. So when he was done, he had it arranged that any slave that wished to could receive that money, receive their paperwork, and he had a system in place for his slaves to be whisked away to Philadelphia where they could be considered free citizens. So there were white people out there who were fighting for black people to be free. Does that mean that they were fighting for black people to have equality? No, it does not. It just means that he acknowledged the fact that one human should not own another human. Now, whether or not he acknowledged the fact that a black person should be treated equally to a white person, I don't know. All I know is he acknowledged that one person should not own another person, that they are not property. And that's all I know. And they were not cattle. And that's all I know. Whether or not he believed that a black person should have a right to vote, should have a right to own property, should have a right to do whatever a white person had a right to do, I don't know. I couldn't tell you that. Never met the man, only know his history and what he did for his slaves. So teaching slavery doesn't have to be all bad. Teaching the history of how white people treated slaves does not have to be all bad. But you say, okay, let's not teach slavery at all because it's going to make some white people feel bad. Some white children feel bad. Okay. Let's not teach about the Independence War. Because it's going to make some British descendants feel bad. Let's not teach how the King of England treated our people and overtaxed us and abused us when we were here. Because it's going to make some English people and some British people feel bad. All right? Let's not teach how the Native Americans taught. Well, what am I saying? We already don't teach that. We don't teach how Native Americans taught Europeans how to plant crops in this land, how to fish their lakes, how to hunt in this land. Nope, we don't teach that. Why? Because it doesn't set in their nice little neat narrative of what Thanksgiving is. And that's the fact of it. critical race theory to a white person, to all these conservatives out there hollering they don't want it taught in school, is nothing more than saying we don't want to teach anything in any school that does not cater to our own narrative of what perfect people white people are. Even though much of this country was built on the backs of black people and Native American people and Latino people. They did the work, while white people held the whip. And they don't want to teach about the white people who were against that whip, because it sets the narrative that they were wrong in their slavery. And it sets the narrative that the slave owner was cruel and unjust to their slaves. And that much of that cruelty and unjustness has survived throughout society. And that it took a law to be able to get a monicule of equality for minority races in the 1960s, and to make it against the law to hang black people, to burn them alive. The same with Asian people and Native American people. It took a law to stop that and make it so you could prosecute those who were doing it, when it should have been a foregone fact from the start that if you kill a human being regardless of their skin color, you are doing something against the law. And that, my dear, is why I vote Democrat. Because of all this crap Republicans are doing. And their followers are no better than those who are sitting in office and spewing their hate-filled politics and their racially charged laws and misogynistic laws. If you can't handle that, if you can't handle that brutal honesty, maybe it's time you stop and take a look inside of yourself and ask yourself, truly, who am I? Because I ask myself that every day. I ask, who am I? Am I the type of person who should have the right to tell a woman what they should do with their body? Am I the type of person to deny races that are not equal to mine the right to know their history? Am I the type of person who wants to hide the history of an entire race of people simply because of how my ancestors acted? We had bad Barclays too. Oh yeah. There was ones that owned castles and threw innocent people into caverns in their castle and let them starve to death. Hearing the cries of their starvation and abuse ringing through the castle, enjoying it. But that doesn't mean our whole family was like that. That means I had a part of my family that I'm ashamed of, but I'm not afraid to teach their history. Because they are not me, unless my mindset is like theirs. And it's not. I don't believe I have the right to abuse any human being I choose to just because they look at me sideways. Or because they look different than me. Or because they demand that they're treated with respect. don't have that right. Some of my ancestors thought they did. That was their problem, not mine. And so I feel no shame for the dirt they have. I feel only shame for what my actions are. And right now, with the actions of the Republican Party, I am ashamed of them. Fully and completely ashamed to know they are even a party in our country, because there is nothing about their actions recently that shows they are patriotic. Nothing that that shows they care for anything more than their rich buddies, their donors, the oil companies, big pharma, and big company. Nothing in their actions and the policies they have put forward shows that they care for anything past that. And if you can't see that, then you're lying to yourself. You need to vote for the people who are actually doing things out there, putting out bills that help the people who need the help the most. Putting out bills out there that give out back to the people who pay the most into that treasury. And it's not the rich. I will tell you that right now. Some rich people don't pay anything into that treasury, while the people they pay down below a starvation wage is paying out 30% of their income to taxes. They're finding ways to skate by with being lucky to pay 12% of their taxes, if anything. And then complaining about having to pay their workers a fair wage and raising the cost of their product that their workers make to make them rich. Without their workers, they wouldn't have that money. But now, okay, we're going to hike your wage up, but guess what? That product you make that you need, you're going to pay twice as much for. That's bullshit. And they're still going to make record profits. You know, those companies could pay their workers $15 an hour and keep every one of their products at its current price and still make a hefty profit without a problem. And they could even pay 30% of their income into taxes and still make a hefty profit. But it's not a big enough profit for them. And the Republicans condone that. They cater to it. They give them subsidies and tax breaks and and deductions in their taxes to make that profit even more for them. So excuse me. Why do I vote Democrat? Take a look at who the Republicans are.